They kidnapped the alien woman, but they didn't know she was a human's wife. The explosion tore through the eastern promenade with surgical violence. Gunnar felt the shockwave hit his chest like a physical wall, the kind of pressure that would have turned most species into a red mist against the bulkhead. Instead, he staggered back 3 steps, his dense musculature absorbing the kinetic energy with a deep ache that spread through his torso like hot iron. Alura. His voice cut through the chaos of screaming merchants and panicking station dwellers. The marketplace had been peaceful moments ago, vendors hawking crystallized fruits from the Andorian belt, spice traders arguing over prices. Now it was smoke and scattered bodies, and the acrid smell of burning composite materials. Gunnar's wife had been examining a bolt of shimmer silk 3 stalls down. He'd been watching her fingers trace the fabric with that particular grace unique to the Felidari, her movements liquid and deliberate. Her platinum hair had caught the station's artificial sunlight, and he'd been thinking about unwinding it from its practical braid later. Then the blast. He moved through the debris field with purpose, each step deliberate. His body, trained since childhood in 3.5 times standard gravity, made the station's artificial environment feel like moving through water. Around him, alien species struggled to rise from where the blast had thrown them. Gunnar found the first body 10 meters from where Alura had been standing. A Korathi guard, his chitinous armor melted through by plasma fire. The weapon's signature was wrong for station security. Gunnar's jaw tightened as he recognized the particular char pattern. Obsidian Fang. The name carried weight across 6 sectors. Slavers with capital ships and no conscience, they specialized in exotic acquisitions. A Felidari diplomat with pearl-white fur and amber eyes would be worth a fortune. He moved toward the promenade's main access corridor, his enhanced vision catching the heat signatures of bodies moving in tactical formation. 6 figures, standard slaver loadout, light armor optimized for speed, pulse rifles calibrated for stunning rather than killing. Gunnar spotted Alura immediately. She was being half-carried, half-dragged by 2 armored figures. Her head hung forward, her body limp from whatever sedative they'd used. One of the slavers noticed him approaching. The alien raised its rifle with professional calm. The plasma bolt caught Gunnar's center mass, right where his heart would be if human anatomy matched standard galactic templates. It didn't. The bolt seared through his shirt and scorched his skin. Gunnar felt the impact rock him back half a step. On his homeworld, he'd weathered storms that could peel the skin from lighter species. This was equivalent to a hard slap. He kept walking. The Crin's eyes widened behind its visor. It fired again, then twice more in rapid succession. Gunnar felt each hit like hammer blows, but his nervous system had evolved to process damage differently. Pain was data. Data could be managed. 10 meters separated them. 5. The Crin dropped its rifle and reached for a neural disruptor. Too slow. Gunnar's hand closed around the alien's throat with the sound of crumpling paper. He didn't squeeze hard. The weight of his grip alone was enough to cut off blood flow. "Where are you taking them?" His voice emerged quiet, almost gentle. The Crin's partner turned, trying to bring its own weapon to bear while maintaining its grip on Alura. Gunnar moved with the deliberate speed of someone who'd spent their life moving through crushing gravity. His elbow caught the creature in its solar plexus, and it folded. Alura slipped from its grip. Gunnar caught her with one arm, cradling her against his chest. Her head lolled against his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. "Gunnar!" Her voice emerged thick, slurred. "They came through the walls." "I know." He adjusted his grip, lifting her more securely. "I've got you." Behind him, he heard the distinctive whine of a compression cannon charging. The kind of weapon designed to rupture organs through armor. Gunnar turned, shielding Alura with his body as the blast hit. The kinetic force slammed into his back, driving the air from his lungs and cracking 2 ribs. He went down to one knee, his vision graying. But he didn't drop Alura. Through the smoke, a figure emerged, tall for galactic standard, with segmented armor and ceremonial markings that indicated serious rank. It held a neural pike. The rumors are true, then, a genuine heavy worlder. The captain tilted its head, studying Gunnar with clinical interest. Your mate will bring considerable currency, but you— The captain's mandibles clicked together. You will bring legend. Behind the captain, the corridor filled with more armored figures. Too many to fight through while protecting Alura. The captain gestured with its pike. Set her down. Come peacefully and she lives. Gunnar looked down at Alura. Her eyes had closed again, her breathing shallow but steady. In sleep, she looked like something from a painting, too delicate for the universe's harsh realities. And she was his. No, Gunnar said simply. The neural pike came down. Gunnar twisted, taking the blow on his shoulder. The electrical discharge flooded his nervous system, every muscle seizing at once. He felt Alura being pulled from his arms, felt his knees hit the deck, felt consciousness sliding away. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was his wife's face, peaceful in forced sleep, being carried away into the smoke. Gunnar woke to the taste of blood and peculiar silence. His shoulder burned where the neural pike had struck, the muscle tissue still twitching. His ribs, the two that had cracked, ground together with each breath. He cataloged the damage automatically. Pain was information. Information guided action. The corridor had been cleared, bodies removed, debris swept aside. How long had he been unconscious? His internal clock suggested 20 minutes, maybe 30. Too long. He pushed himself upright, his dense musculature protesting. A Vessery medic approached with a scanner, her multiple eyes widening at his readings. Sir, you need immediate treatment. Your skeletal integrity is manageable. Gunnar stood, towering over the slight medic. I need station security records. Last 30 minutes, all external docking activity. The conversation with the Trellis station commander lasted 3 minutes. When the commander finished explaining why civilian interference was inadvisable, Gunnar asked one question. How long until you locate my wife? The silence was answer enough. Transfer all external docking records to my personal terminal. Now. Something in his tone must have conveyed what would happen if the commander refused. The data transfer came through within 30 seconds. His quarters were 3 levels up. Inside, everything remained exactly as they'd left it that morning. Her robe draped over their reading chair, 2 mugs on the counter, the bed unmade from their morning activities. He forced the memories down. Emotion was useful, but only when channeled into action. At his terminal, he began parsing sensor data. 12 ships had departed in the critical window. He eliminated 7 based on size and configuration. Cross-referenced the remaining 5 with known Fang vessel profiles. One match. The vessel had filed a departure plan for the Kesson Belt, but Gunnar knew the Fang's operations well enough to recognize a feint. They'd change course for one of their established strongholds. The closest was in the Depth Reach Nebula, 3 days away, in the Noxian Shoals, where a gas giant's crushing gravity made standard approach vectors suicidal. Most ships couldn't get within 100,000 kilometers without structural failure. He'd need a ship, fast, maneuverable, stripped down to essentials. Gunnar moved to their closet and began pulling out equipment. His old combat harness, compression wraps for his ribs, a medical kit with stimulants calibrated for heavy worlder physiology. He stripped off his burned shirt, examining the plasma damage in their bathroom mirror. 3 distinct impact sites already beginning to heal. The compression cannon had left a massive bruise across his back. He pressed his fingers against his cracked ribs, feeling sharp edges. 2 weeks for full healing. He didn't have 3 weeks. Gunnar unwrapped the compression bandages, pulling them tight around his torso until breathing became deliberate work. On his homeworld, they'd learned early that bodies could function far past what other species considered critical injury. He was willing. Before leaving, he stopped by their bed. Alura's side still held the impression of her body. He placed his hand where her head had rested. I'm coming for you, he said to the empty room. Whatever it takes, wherever they've taken you. The words were a promise and a threat. The ship waiting at Bay 23 was a modified Korathi runner, stripped down and clearly built for speed over comfort. A Thexian mechanic was running final checks. The same Thexian Gunnar had pulled from the collapsed stall during the raid. "You pulled the beam off me," the Thexian said. "Cost me nothing to provide transportation. Ship's yours for 2 weeks." Gunnar studied the vessel. Fast engines, minimal life support, weapons mounts stripped to reduce mass. Fuel range: 5,000 light seconds at maximum burn. Modified tanks, reinforced inertial compensators. The Thexian gestured toward the ship's underbelly. "Also heard you were headed somewhere gravity might be a factor." "What else did you hear?" "That the Fang took your mate, that they're running for the depth reach." The Thexian's compound eyes reflected light in complex patterns. "Also heard they're using the Noxian shoals as staging. Gas giant, crushing gravity. They'll regroup there before making the final push." The Noxian shoals, a failed star surrounded by gas giants, each with gravity wells that made standard approach suicidal. "Weapons?" Gunnar asked. "None, weight consideration, but I included cargo bay breach equipment. Figured you might need to make a personal entry." Gunnar allowed himself a slight smile. "Thank you." He boarded without ceremony, settling into the cockpit's reinforced seat. The controls were standard enough. Simple systems for a simple mission. Chase, board, retrieve. The station fell away as he plotted course toward the Noxian shoals. 3 days at maximum burn. The first day passed in silence. Gunnar spent it reviewing everything he knew about Dravish physiology and fighting tactics. Scarvesh would be formidable, but they lacked the same skeletal reinforcement humans possessed. Weaknesses to exploit. On the second day, he began physical preparation. The cargo bay became a training space where he ran through combat drills. Pain was still present, but manageable. His body was healing faster than most species could track. The third day brought him within sensor range of the Noxian shoals. The star system spread before him in shades of orange and purple, the failed sun barely illuminating the massive gas giants. The largest planet, Noxos Prime, filled his view screen with bands of churning atmosphere. Somewhere in that gravity well, the Fang had established a temporary base. His scanners picked up trace emissions consistent with a ship in low orbit, right at the edge where most vessels would experience structural stress. The Fang was using gravity as a shield. They hadn't accounted for him. He adjusted approach vector, angling down into the gravity well at a steep trajectory. The ship's computer protested, displaying warnings about structural integrity. Gunnar overrode each one systematically. Atmospheric resistance increased as he pushed deeper. The hull began groaning, metal flexing under stress. His inertial compensators struggled with the acceleration, G-forces building until normal humans would have blacked out. Gunnar felt awake, alert, the pressure like coming home. The Fang vessel resolved on his sensors, a repurposed Korathi frigate, anchored at a gravity depth that would kill most boarding parties. Not clever enough. He brought his ship alongside, matching orbit in the crushing environment. The boarding sequence was straightforward. He sealed his environmental suit and attached magnetic clamps to the Fang ship's hull. The plasma cutter took 40 seconds to burn through their armor. Atmosphere vented with violent force. Gunnar held on, then pulled himself through when the rush subsided. Inside, emergency lights painted everything red. A security team was waiting. 4 aliens in combat armor, weapons raised. They opened fire. Plasma bolts struck his suit's reinforced plating. A kinetic round caught him in the thigh, burying itself in muscle without reaching bone. Gunnar walked forward. The security team's discipline broke as he closed the distance. He didn't kill them. His fist caught the first alien in center mass, shattering its ribcage. The second tried to dodge, but his hand snapped out and caught it by the helmet. He lifted it off its feet and slammed it against the bulkhead hard enough to dent the metal. Both dropped unconscious. Gunnar continued deeper, following the layout common to Korathi designs. 3 more security encounters. Each ended the same way, brief, violent, conclusive. He found what he needed in the captain's quarters, a terminal with full ship access. He bypassed security protocols with methods learned during his engineering days. The prisoner manifest loaded. 23 captives. He found Alura's entry near the bottom. Felidari female, diplomatic background, estimated value, 2.3 million credits. Status, sedated, cell 12. But beneath her entry was a second notation. Bait designation, primary acquisition target, heavy worlder male, bounty 15 million credits alive. Capture authorization, Captain Scarvash, operation code, Gravity's pull. Gunnar stared at the text. They hadn't taken Alura for her value. They'd taken her to get to him. The realization settled like physical weight. This wasn't a rescue operation. It was a trap, baited with the one thing they knew he'd pursue across any distance. His wife. The terminal showed recent communications with an unknown source. Gunnar broke the encryption through brute force. Genetic Acquisition Consortium, Research Division 7. Heavy worlder specimen required for adaptive genetics program. Live capture essential. Preliminary research suggests unprecedented regenerative capacity. If rumors of enhanced sexual stamina prove accurate, reproductive viability studies will be prioritized. They wanted to study him, breed him, use whatever made heavy worlders unique to engineer new slave varieties. And they'd grabbed Alura because they knew he'd walk into any trap to get her back. They were right. He purged the terminal with a plasma charge, then moved toward the holding section. Cell 12 was behind a reinforced door with biometric locks. Gunnar placed both hands against the door frame and pulled. Metal screamed. Welds popped. The entire assembly tore free, and he tossed it aside. Alura lay on the cell's narrow bunk, still sedated but breathing steadily. Gunnar checked her vital signs. Pulse strong, no signs of injury beyond minor bruising. He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest. Gunnar. Her voice emerged thick. Her eyes flickered open, struggling to focus. One hand came up to touch his face. "I'm here," he said softly. "I've got you." "They wanted you," her words were slurred. "Said I was bait, said they needed you for experiments." Her eyes widened. "You have to leave, it's a trap." "I know, doesn't change anything." "Gunnar." "We'll discuss it later. Right now we're leaving." Alarms blared with renewed intensity. The ship systems had organized a coordinated response, sealing bulkheads to trap him. Gunnar studied the corridor's structural layout. These Korathi designs used load-bearing walls between sections. If he removed enough supports in the right sequence, the entire section would lose integrity. Catastrophic for the ship, liberating for him. He set Alura down gently, then moved to the nearest support column. His fist hit it with the force of a falling asteroid. Once, twice, 3 times. The column buckled on the 4th impact. He compromised 4 columns, 5, 6. The corridor began to shift, deck plates buckling. Warning klaxons changed pitch, indicating catastrophic damage. Above, he heard hull plating beginning to fail. He retrieved Alura as the corridor disintegrated. An emergency hatch blew open ahead, atmosphere venting. Through the opening, he could see his ship, magnetic clamps holding steady. 20 meters, maybe 30, a manageable jump in standard gravity. Potentially lethal here. Gunnar looked down at Alura. She was more alert now, fear and trust warring in her expression. She knew what he was planning. "Hold on to me," he said, "and don't let go." Her arms wrapped around his neck. "I never let go." He kissed her once, hard and fast. Then he jumped. The gravitational forces grabbed them immediately, pulling with strength that would tear most species apart. Gunnar felt it like a physical embrace as they fell through the gap between ships. His trajectory calculations had been correct, but hadn't accounted for the Fang ship's continuing disintegration. Debris tumbled past them, twisted metal plates, severed conduits. Gunnar twisted mid-fall, using his mass as ballast to adjust their vector. Alura's grip was unbreakable, her body pressed tight against his. They hit the runner's hull with force that would have liquefied normal humans. Gunnar's legs absorbed most of the energy, his skeletal structure distributing the impact through his entire frame. Something in his left ankle cracked. His broken rib screamed protest, at least one breaking completely. He ignored all of it, focusing on maintaining his grip on Alura. Her suit had torn along one seam, atmosphere venting. 30 seconds, maybe less. The airlock was 10 meters away. Gunnar moved with desperate speed. Each step was agony through his damaged ankle. Didn't matter. He reached the airlock and punched the emergency override. The door cycled open, revealing the equipment bay. He tumbled inside with Alura, slapping the closure control. The door sealed. Atmosphere flooded the chamber. Alura's suit was failing completely. Gunnar ripped the helmet off and she gasped in air. Her face was pale, eyes wide with shock, but alive. Very alive. "Breathe," he told her. "Just breathe." She did great heaving breaths. Her hands gripped his arms. "You're hurt, your ribs are functional." He moved to the cockpit controls. "We need to leave, now." The magnetic clamps released. Gunnar pushed the throttle forward, feeling the engine's strain against Noxos Prime's gravity. Climbing out required massive energy expenditure, more than the runner was designed to handle. The engines would probably burn out before they reached safe altitude. Probably wasn't the same as certainly. He pushed harder. Behind them, the Fang ship was coming apart in earnest, structural supports failing in cascading sequence. Explosions blossomed across its hull. 23 captives were still aboard. The thought hit him with unexpected weight. Acceptable losses, his training whispered. Necessary sacrifice. The words felt hollow. His ship broke atmosphere with a scream of tortured engines. The orange clouds fell away, replaced by the black of space. His control board was a display of warning lights, engine stress, structural integrity, life support, all pushing past safe parameters. But they were free. Gunnar allowed himself 10 seconds of relief before beginning assessment. His ankle was fractured, swelling already restricting movement. At least 2 ribs broken completely. Plasma burns covered his torso, multiple kinetic projectiles still embedded in his flesh. Pain levels were severe. He'd survived worse. Alura appeared in the cockpit doorway, having stripped off her damaged suit. Her platinum hair was disheveled, her amber eyes carrying fury and relief. "You almost died," she said flatly. "Multiple times, that jump between ships, I could feel your bones breaking." "I had it under control." "You had nothing under control," the fury won out. "You walked into a trap. You sabotaged a ship with prisoners aboard. You jumped through vacuum in a gravity well that should have killed us both." Gunnar turned to face her. "Would you have preferred I leave you?" The question stopped her. Her anger deflated slightly. "No, but I would have preferred you be smart about the rescue." It worked. Alura crossed to him and knelt beside his chair, her hands cupping his face. "I know they wanted you. I heard them talking about experiments, breeding programs. They were going to use me as leverage." Her eyes met his, fierce. "I would rather have died than let them do that to you. And I would rather burn every ship in this sector than let them keep you." His hand covered hers. "That's not negotiable. You're my wife, my partner, the only thing in this universe that matters more than my next breath." She leaned forward and kissed him, slow and deep, tasting blood and burned skin. When she pulled back, tears tracked down her cheeks. "You terrify me sometimes. The things you're willing to risk. What do I do if you push too far one day?" "You adapt," he said simply. "The way we always do, the way humans always have." "I'm not human." "No, you're better. You're the reason I push this far, the reason I'm willing to break myself if that's what it takes." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "They took you because they knew I'd come. They were right. They'll always be right. There is no trap convincing enough, no threat severe enough to keep me from you. Her arms wrapped around him carefully. You're impossible, literally, physically impossible. No species should survive what you just did. Humans aren't no species. We're the ones who looked at worlds designed to kill us and said, good enough. We're stubborn and creative and too stupid to quit when physics says we should. HFY, she used the abbreviation with a slight smile. Humanity, fuck yeah, he confirmed. In this case, specifically fuck anyone who thinks they can take my wife and get away with it. She laughed, the sound slightly watery but genuine. What do we do now? They'll regroup, come after us again. Gunnar had been thinking exactly that. The Genetic Acquisition Consortium had resources and now specific interest in capturing him. Running would only delay the inevitable. We go forward, he said. They're expecting us to run. Instead, we find whoever's funding this consortium and we end the problem at its source. That's insane. We have no intelligence. We have me. He met her eyes steadily. They wanted to study what makes heavy worlders special. I'll show them, up close and personal. Alura stared at him, her diplomatic mind working through implications. Finally, she nodded. All right, but we do this smart. No more charging in without reconnaissance. I make no promises. Gunnar. He kissed her again, cutting off the protest. This time deeper, more intense, carrying 3 years of accumulated devotion and the heat that came from almost losing everything. She responded with equal intensity, her hands tangling in his hair, her body pressing against his with careful awareness of his injuries but clear intent. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. You're hurt, she said, but her tone had shifted. I'll heal. The medical supplies. Can wait. His hands slid down her sides. Right now I need to confirm you're real, that you're here. She laughed, this time with an edge that sent heat through his battered frame. Later. Much later, after I deal with your injuries properly. He forced himself to release her. Come on, we have a medical kit somewhere in this death trap. You mean your valiant rescue vessel? That too. The medical kit was more comprehensive than expected. The Thexian had included supplies for multiple species, dermal regenerators, bone knitters, chemical stabilizers. Alura insisted on treating his injuries first. She won the argument by pointing out he couldn't reach his own back. They worked in the ship's tiny living compartment. Gunnar sat on the bunk's edge while Alura stood behind him, her hands steady as she applied regenerative gel. This one's deep, she said quietly, fingers tracing a burn across his shoulder blade. The plasma burned through to bone. Feels about right. He tried to keep his voice neutral. I'm sorry, I know this hurts. Worth it, every second of it, worth it to get you back. She met his eyes, her own glistening. You say things like that so easily. I don't, it's just true. Alura returned to the burns, working in silence. The regenerative gel burned as it catalyzed, forcing damaged tissue to heal at accelerated rates. Unpleasant, but effective. I remember the first time you touched me, she said suddenly, voice soft with memory. The night we met at the Andorian delegation. You shook my hand, and I couldn't understand why you were being so careful. Gunnar smiled slightly. You were, compared to me anyway, most species are. I thought you were being condescending. This big human treating the delicate alien with kid gloves. She moved to a burn on his lower back. Then you started talking about infrastructure engineering, and I realized you weren't being careful because you thought I was weak. You were being careful because you knew your own strength. Still am, always will be with you. I know. She moved around to face him, examining the damage to his chest. The sight made her wince, burns, bruises, puncture wounds. This is going to take a while, lean back. He complied, stretching out while she settled beside him. Her hands moved with clinical efficiency, applying gel and activating bone knitters. I remember our first night together, Gunnar said, watching her work. After the delegation ended, you invited me for drinks, except we never actually made it to the bar. Color rose in her cheeks. You were very persuasive. You were very willing. True. She activated a bone knitter over his worst rib fracture. I'd never been with a human before. Your reputation suggested either incredible endurance or devastating fragility, depending on who was telling. And you exceeded expectations. Her hand trailed across his abdomen, ostensibly checking for bleeding, but with deliberate slowness. The way you moved, so controlled, so careful, like you were constantly aware of your strength and refusing to let it overwhelm. I'd never felt so safe and so desired simultaneously. Gunnar's hand came up to cup her cheek. I was terrified I'd hurt you. Your bones are so light, your skin so soft. I kept thinking one wrong move and I'd break something I could never fix. You didn't. She turned her head to press a kiss into his palm. You never have. Even now, injured and exhausted, you're still so careful with me. Always will be. She finished with the bone knitter and set it aside, assessment apparently complete. But she didn't move away. Instead, she stayed close, her body radiating warmth. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. When they took me, when I woke in that cell, I thought that was it, that they'd kill you trying to stop them. Not a chance. His hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. No force in this universe could keep me from you. Not gravity, not physics, not some criminal consortium. She laughed softly. You're ridiculously confident. I'm ridiculously right. He pulled her down gently. They tried to use you as bait. All they did was guarantee their own destruction. Vengeful Gunnar, I like it. You like every version of me. True. She kissed him then, slow and deep, her body pressing against his with careful awareness but clear intent. Even the beaten, burned, stubbornly refusing to admit he needs rest version. I don't need rest, I need you. You need both. But her hands were moving across his chest now, tracing healing wounds with touches that were decidedly non-medical. Though I suppose we could negotiate the order. Gunnar's fingers found the fastening of her coveralls. Negotiation is your specialty. I defer to your expertise. Such deference. Her breath was warm against his throat, her lips finding the pulse point there. Very unlike you. I'm adaptable. You're something. She helped him with the coveralls, the fabric sliding away to reveal cream-colored fur beneath. Gunnar had traced every line of her body countless times, but the sight still made his breath catch. Beautiful, the word was insufficient. Your turn, she said, her hands moving to his damaged clothing. They worked together to remove what remained, careful around his worst injuries. When they were both bare, she settled beside him, her body warm against his. They lay like that for a moment, just breathing together, confirming presence through the simplest touches. I love you, she said quietly, in case there was any doubt. No doubt, never any doubt. His hand traced down her spine. But I'd risk it anyway, every time, forever. She shifted, moving to straddle him with careful precision that avoided his worst injuries. Her amber eyes held his, fierce and tender at once. Then let me remind you why coming home matters. Gunnar's hands settled on her hips, his grip firm but controlled. I never forget. Good. She leaned down, her lips finding his in a kiss that started gentle and escalated quickly. But reinforcement never hurts. What followed was slow, intense, and punctuated by occasional winces when movement stressed healing tissue. They'd learned each other's bodies over 3 years, understood the rhythms and responses that brought maximum pleasure. But this time carried additional weight, confirmation of survival, celebration of reunion, defiant assertion that they were still alive and together. Alura moved above him with practiced grace, her body finding angles that minimized stress while maximizing contact. Gunnar let her set the pace, his hands roaming across her skin with touches ranging from featherlight to bruising. They knew each other, completely, intimately, and that knowledge translated into something transcending simple physical pleasure. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard and sporting matching expressions of satisfaction. Alura's head rested on his chest, positioned carefully to avoid injuries. His hand traced idle patterns across her back. We should probably plot a course, she said eventually. "Figure out where this consortium operates." "Probably." He made no move to get up. "And you should rest." "Also probably. But right now I'm exactly where I want to be." His arms tightened around her. "The universe can wait. They already took hours from us. I'm claiming this time back." Alura lifted her head to look at him, her expression soft. "You're very possessive about time." "I'm possessive about you. Time is just how I measure getting to keep you." "Romantic and mathematically precise. My favorite combination." "Good, because you're stuck with me." "Promise." "Absolute guarantee." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Whatever comes next, hunting this consortium, dealing with whoever's funding them, we face it together." "Together," she agreed, "though maybe with slightly more planning and slightly less jumping through gravity wells." "I'll consider it." She laughed and settled back against his chest. They lay like that until the ship's automated systems chimed, indicating they'd drifted far enough from Noxo's prime to safely engage faster-than-light travel. The universe was ready to continue. So were they. The trail led to Tartho's station, a hulking construct at the edge of the burning gulf. Gunnar spent 3 days following data threads, cross-referencing with databases he still had access to. The Genetic Acquisition Consortium maintained a legitimate public front. Behind that, they ran black site research facilities. Tartho's station housed their executive operations. They docked under false registration. The station's main concourse was a riot of species and commerce. Gunnar moved through crowds with Alura close beside him, dressed in practical clothing with diplomatic credentials visible. His presence drew attention anyway. His size, his density, the way crowds instinctively parted. The consortium's public offices occupied a prestigious location. Gunnar studied the building from a cafe, noting security patterns. "Front entrance is too obvious," Alura said quietly. "Biometric scanners, background checks." "Agreed, we're not using the front entrance." He'd identified a maintenance access point, a service corridor connecting to lower levels. They waited until local evening, then moved. The maintenance corridor was exactly as predicted. Alura bypassed door locks with equipment from her diplomatic kit. Inside, the corridor extended into darkness. Gunnar led the way, his enhanced vision picking out details. They needed the research division, 3 levels down. At the first security checkpoint, 2 guards stood watch. Standard equipment, stun batons, comm units, neural disruptors. Gunnar stepped into view deliberately. Both guards reacted with professional alertness. "This area is restricted," the first said. "Identify yourselves." "We're here about the Heavy Worlder Acquisition Program," Gunnar said calmly. "I understand you've been looking for specimens." The guards exchanged glances. The second raised its comm unit. "Control, we have." Gunnar moved. 3 steps closed the distance. His hand crushed the comm unit before it could transmit. His other hand caught the first guard's wrist, applying pressure until fingers opened. Neither guard had time to scream before he had them both in holds that cut off blood flow. They slumped unconscious within seconds. Alura stepped over their bodies. "You could have been more subtle." "Could have, chose not to be." "Why?" "Because I want them to know I'm here." He dragged the guards into a side room. "I want whoever's running this to feel what it's like when something comes for them they can't stop." Alura paused to look at him seriously. "Psychological warfare." "Appropriate response." The door opened, revealing a more sophisticated corridor beyond. "They took you to hurt me. I'm returning the lesson." The research division sprawled across the sublevel, laboratories, holding cells, administrative offices. Through windows, Gunnar saw experiments in progress. Genetic sequencing equipment, forced growth chambers, surgical suites. His jaw tightened. "This is worse than I thought," Alura said quietly. "They're not just studying genetics, they're actively creating new species." "Designer slaves." Gunnar studied a holding cell where a hybrid creature sat huddled. Part Korathi, part something else, its body a map of surgical intervention. Custom built to order. We need evidence. An alarm shrieked through the facility. Gunnar spun toward the sound. Lights shifted to red emergency illumination. Heavy security doors began slamming shut. They know we're here, Alura said. Good. Gunnar moved toward the nearest security door, watching it descend. Saves me the trouble of finding them. He reached the door just as it finished sealing. The metal was reinforced durasteel, designed to contain even violent subjects. Specifications suggested it could withstand approximately 40,000 newtons before failure. Gunnar placed both hands against the surface and pushed. Metal groaned. The door frame began to buckle, welds popping like gunshots as he applied pressure exceeding engineering tolerances. His muscles burned, his ribs screaming protest. A door was just another obstacle. It gave way with a shriek, the assembly tearing free. Gunnar tossed the multi-ton barrier aside. Alura stared. That was supposed to be reinforced. It was, insufficiently. They moved deeper. Security guards gave way to tactical response teams with military-grade equipment, energy weapons capable of punching through vehicle armor, concussion grenades, neural disruptors. None of it was enough. Gunnar moved through them like a force of nature, absorbing damage that would kill standard humans and returning it with calculated violence. He didn't kill, didn't need to, but each encounter left bodies unconscious and equipment destroyed. Behind him, Alura documented everything. Evidence of genetic experiments, financial records, communications proving criminality. They found the control center in the facility's deepest level. Captain Scarvash was waiting. The control center was vast, holographic displays showing every facility section simultaneously. Scarvash stood at its center, the Dravish's segmented armor gleaming. Impressive entrance, the captain said, voice carrying genuine appreciation. Exactly as predicted. The heavy worlder responds to threat with overwhelming force, demonstrates the adaptive capacity that makes your species so valuable. Gunnar stepped into the room with Alura behind him. His body was a map of fighting, fresh burns, new bruises, at least one finger broken from punching through reinforced bulkheads. Where are the other subjects? He asked flatly. Secure location. Scarvash gestured at displays showing the facility's damage. You've caused considerable destruction. 17 security personnel hospitalized, 3 reinforced barriers demolished. The captain's mandibles clicked appreciatively. Magnificent multitasking. Release the subjects. Surrender your data. You might survive the next 10 minutes. Bold offer. I counter with an alternative. Scarvash touched a control, and the displays shifted to show a single image. Alura gasped. The image showed her parents' home on Felidari Prime, her family's estate, peaceful gardens and elegant architecture captured in real-time surveillance. Your mate's family, Scarvash said conversationally. 3 parents, 6 siblings, countless extended relatives, all easily accessible. The captain's eyes fixed on Gunnar. You surrender yourself for study or they die, all of them. Gunnar felt Alura's hand grip his arm, fingers digging into flesh. Her breathing had gone shallow. He studied Scarvash with cold calculation. The threat was real. The consortium had resources to execute violence across multiple systems. How long? Gunnar asked quietly. For compliance. Immediately. My associates are positioned to strike within the hour without my authorization to stand down. No, Alura's voice emerged strained but firm. Gunnar, don't even consider. I'm not considering, he squeezed her hand. I'm calculating. Scarvash tilted its head. You refuse, knowing the consequences. I refuse the premise. Gunnar's hand moved to his back, where he'd concealed a device from the facility's security systems. You've based your strategy on the assumption I'm negotiating from weakness, that I need to choose between Alura's family and my freedom. Because you do. No, I don't. Gunnar activated the device. The holographic displays exploded with new information: communications intercepts, security footage, financial records. Everything Alura had been documenting, now broadcast across every display and simultaneously transmitted to receivers Gunnar had seated throughout the facility, including the station's central communications hub. What? Scarvash lunged for the control surface, trying to shut down transmission. Too slow. The data was already propagating. I broke into your security systems 20 minutes ago, Gunnar said calmly. While you were evacuating subjects, every command you've issued, every communication, all recorded, all transmitted, all now with the Interstellar Commerce Commission, military intelligence, and about 40 news organizations. Scarvash stared at displays, watching operational security disintegrate. This is impossible. We're designed to stop sophisticated infiltration. Gunnar allowed himself a slight smile. I'm not sophisticated. I'm just really good at breaking things until they do what I want. The captain's mandibles clicked rapidly. The strike teams are being arrested as we speak. Alura's voice carried renewed confidence. You transmitted their positions in your threat assessment. Military intelligence has had time to deploy intercept teams. She stepped forward. As a registered ambassador of the Felidari Diplomatic Corps, I'm placing you under citizen's arrest for conspiracy to commit violence, illegal genetic experimentation, and about 40 other charges. Scarvash looked between them, understanding dawning. You baited me. You baited us first, Gunnar said. Taking Alura to force me into a trap, fair's fair. The captain's hand moved toward a concealed weapon. Gunnar was faster, closing distance and disarming the Dravish with brutal efficiency. Don't, Gunnar said quietly. You're strong, trained, experienced. In standard conditions, you might survive fighting me for a few seconds. His hand gripped the captain's armored collar, metal creaking. But I just spent 20 minutes fighting through your security while injured and exhausted. I'm not in a generous mood. Scarvash's mandibles trembled. The consortium will send others. This operation is too valuable to abandon. Let them try. Gunnar released the captain. Every team they send, I'll dismantle. Every facility they build, I'll destroy. And I'll document all of it until no one in civilized space will shelter them. He leaned closer. You took my wife. You threatened her family. You made this personal. That was your real mistake. Station security arrived 10 minutes later. They found Scarvash restrained, surrounded by evidence guaranteeing conviction. The research subjects were located in an emergency bunker 3 levels down, traumatized but alive. Gunnar and Alura gave statements lasting 3 hours. The whole time, he kept her close, one hand maintaining constant contact. Confirming presence, confirming safety. When officials finally released them, they returned to their ship in silence. Inside, the familiar cramped quarters felt like sanctuary. Alura collapsed onto the bunk, exhaustion overwhelming her. That was insane, all of it. She looked up at him with admiration and exasperation. How did you know they'd transmit the strike team positions? I didn't, not for certain. Gunnar settled beside her, pulling her close. But I know operational security. Anyone coordinating multiple teams needs constant communication. And anyone arrogant enough to make threats using family will want confirmation threats are credible. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Basic psychology combined with tactical assessment. You could have been wrong. Could have, wasn't. She laughed. Confidence or competence? Both, always both. His arms tightened. I told you we'd end this. Mission accomplished. The consortium still exists. For now, but we've exposed their operations, destroyed their research, liberated their subjects. The organization will collapse as authorities move against each facility. He tilted her chin up. And if they're stupid enough to come after us again, I'll teach them why humans don't quit until problems are solved permanently. Alura traced new injuries marking his face. You're terrifying sometimes. Only to people who threaten what's mine. Possessive. Absolutely. He kissed her, slow and deep. You're mine, forever. No negotiation, no compromise, no force strong enough to change that. Good, she returned the kiss with equal intensity, because I'm not interested in being anywhere else. They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Outside, the station continued its endless activity. Inside their ship, in that tiny space carved from the universe's chaos, there was only them. That was enough. That would always be enough. 2 weeks later, they stood on the surface of Gravitas, a heavy world in the Kesson sector. 2.8 standard gravity, red dwarf star, minimal population. The planet rotated below during their approach, surface a patchwork of gray stone and dark vegetation. No oceans, gravity made liquid water bodies unstable at planetary scale. It's beautiful, Alura said softly, studying the view. Harsh but beautiful. Wait until you experience the gravity. Gunnar began landing sequence. You'll feel 3 times heavier. I've prepared. Physical conditioning, bone density treatments, muscle enhancement. She glanced at him with a smile. Your wife has been planning this for a while. How long? Since the day you proposed. You said you'd follow me anywhere, but your eyes went distant when you talked about your homeworld. I knew eventually you'd need to come back to gravity that felt right. Gunnar reached over and took her hand. 3 years of planning. 3 years of loving someone who doesn't fit in standard environments. They landed in Gravitas's small spaceport. The moment they opened the airlock, Gunnar felt it. Home. The pressure against his chest, weight in his limbs, the sense of rightness from existing in an environment designed to challenge survival. He stepped onto the landing pad and felt his spine decompress, vertebrae settling into proper alignment for the first time in years. Beside him, Alura descended more carefully. Her treatments helped, but she was still fundamentally built for lighter environments. Each step took visible effort. I can carry you, Gunnar offered. No, she waved off the suggestion with determined pride. I'll adapt, just give me a minute. The settlement's administrative center handled their immigration paperwork with efficient boredom. Gunnar's heavy worlder physiology satisfied requirements immediately. Alura required more documentation, but her credentials carried weight. The official provided information on available property. There's a property south of here. Old homestead, abandoned 5 years ago. Beautiful location, but isolated. We'll take it, Gunnar said immediately. The homestead was everything described. Built into a cliff face overlooking a valley, it consisted of a main habitat carved from stone and several smaller structures. Solar collectors and geothermal tap provided power, self-sufficient by design. The interior was surprisingly spacious. Previous owners had hollowed out multiple chambers, sleeping quarters, cooking area, bathing facilities, a large common room with viewports overlooking the valley. Alura explored slowly, movement still careful in heavy gravity. I love it, she said finally. It's perfect. You sure? It's very different. She placed one finger against his lips. It's perfect because it's ours, because we choose it together, because no one's trying to take us apart or use us against each other. Her hand cupped his cheek. That's all I need. Gunnar pulled her close. Then welcome home. They spent the next week settling in. Gunnar repaired degraded systems. Alura focused on making the space livable rather than merely functional. Together, they transformed the abandoned homestead into home. On their 8th night, they came together with slow intensity in their oversized bed. The heavy gravity added weight to every movement, made each touch more deliberate. Gunnar held her carefully, always conscious of his strength. I love you, she whispered against his skin. In every gravity, every situation, every version of us. I love you, he responded. You're my gravity, the force that keeps me grounded, that gives meaning to existence. She laughed softly. Most romantic application of physics I've ever heard. I'm an engineer. Romance is just applied mathematics. Then calculate this. She shifted above him, movements slow in crushing gravity. What's the probability of us making it here, through everything that tried to separate us? Gunnar's hands settled on her hips. Mathematically, approaching zero, so improbable it shouldn't have happened. But it did. Because humans don't quit when probability says we should. We adapt. We persist. We look at impossible odds and say, try me. HFY, she murmured. Humanity, fuck yeah, he confirmed. Afterward, they lay tangled together. Through the viewport, Gravitas's night sky spread across the universe. Fewer stars visible, the atmosphere filtering out all but the brightest lights. Do you miss it? Alura asked. Your old life, military service, engineering projects. No, the answer came without hesitation. That life was about survival. This life is about actually living. With me. With you, always with you. His arm tightened. You're the mission that matters. Building this home, creating space where we can exist without constant threat, that's success. Everything else was just preparation. She pressed a kiss to his chest. I'm going to hold you to that, when the galaxy inevitably produces another crisis. Let it try. Gunnar stared up at stone ceiling. We've survived everything so far, whatever comes next. We face together, she finished. Adapted, persistent, too stubborn to quit. Exactly. They fell asleep holding each other in their fortress, carved from a world designed to kill anything insufficiently adapted. Outside, Gravitas's harsh environment continued its eternal pressure. Inside, there was only warmth and safety and absolute certainty of each other. In the morning, they woke to Gravitas's red dwarf sun painting the valley in shades of orange and gold. Alura made breakfast while Gunnar checked systems, the domestic routine feeling surreal after weeks of violence. This was victory. Not dramatic conclusions or explosive finales, but the simple reality of waking together in a home they'd chosen, in an environment that accepted them without question. They spent that first full day exploring their property. Everything adapted, everything persisted. Just like them. As the red dwarf sun set, painting the valley in deep crimson, Gunnar and Alura stood together on the cliff edge. Her hand fit perfectly in his, their fingers interlaced with casual intimacy. Thank you, she said quietly, for not quitting, for coming after me, for destroying everything that tried to keep us apart. Thank you for being worth it, for choosing this life, for adapting to gravity that should be killing you just to stay by my side. We're ridiculous. We're human. He pulled her close, gravity pressing them together. Or close enough. Stubbornness and adaptation, love and persistence, the refusal to accept what physics says should be our limits. Alura looked up at him, amber eyes reflecting dying sunlight. HFY. Humanity, fuck yeah, Gunnar said, and kissed his wife beneath an alien sky, in gravity designed to crush anything insufficiently adapted, in the home they'd built from stone and determination and absolutely uncompromising devotion. Behind them, their habitat glowed with warm interior light, a beacon of human persistence carved into a world that should have been hostile. Ahead, the rest of their lives spread across time like the valley below, challenging, beautiful, earned through effort rather than granted by circumstance. They'd survived slavers and conspiracies. They'd endured violence and threat and impossible odds. They'd adapted to environments ranging from crushing gravity wells to the vacuum of space. And through it all, they'd remained what they'd always been. Two people who'd chosen each other against every rational argument, who'd built their love in spaces between danger, who'd refused to quit even when the universe seemed determined to separate them. That was humanity's real strength. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just enduring, but building. Not just adapting, but creating something beautiful from the harshest materials. They turned together and walked back toward their home, gravity pressing down with familiar strength, the universe around them vast and indifferent. Inside, warmth waited. Inside, safety endured. Inside, love persisted against every force that physics could conjure. And that, more than any battle won or enemy defeated, was victory.